Liu Xiao stood up. The room went quiet. Not the polite quiet of an audience waiting. The specific quiet of 200 people who have just understood that something is about to happen that cannot be undone. She was 27 years old. She wore a dark dress. She held a phone in her right hand with the careful grip of someone who has been holding it for 3 months and has not let go. Her father sat at the head of the table. Liu Ming, 61 years old, billionaire. The man who had just announced to every journalist and executive and business partner in the room that he was giving his company to his daughter. His blood. His legacy. Liu Xiao looked at him. "Thank you, Father," she said. He smiled. The smile of a man who has just done something generous in public. "Before I respond," she said, "I want to say something." She unlocked the phone. Subscribe right now. Because what comes out of that phone in the next 30 seconds has been sitting there for 3 months. And when you hear it, when the room hears it, Liu Ming will not be smiling anymore. And his 26-year-old fiancée will not be able to look at anyone. And Liu Xiao will do something that no one in that room will forget for the rest of their lives. Stay until the end. The engagement dinner had been Liu Ming's idea. Everything was always Liu Ming's idea. That was one of the first things you learned about him. Not because he said it, because he never acknowledged anyone else's. The Grand Hyatt Ballroom, Beijing. 200 guests. Journalists from 4 financial publications. The cameras were there by invitation. Liu Ming liked cameras when the story was his. Round tables with white linen. Champagne in crystal. The specific atmosphere of money performing itself for an audience that was also performing. At the center of it, Liu Ming in a dark suit, silver at his temples, the face of a man who had decided at some point that he had earned the right to want whatever he wanted. Beside him, Fang Ruoxi, 26. Her dress was red, her smile was practiced. She had learned very quickly how to sit beside a powerful man and make it look effortless. And at a smaller table near the edge of the room, An Wei, 53 years old, Liu Ming's wife of 30 years. Former wife. The divorce had been finalized 11 days ago. She sat straight in her chair and she did not look at the head table, and her hands were folded in her lap with the stillness of someone who has been preparing for a long time for an evening that would hurt. She had been invited. That detail mattered. Liu Ming had invited his ex-wife to his engagement dinner. His lawyers had advised against it. He had overruled them. He liked the specific optics of magnanimity, of a man so secure in his new happiness that he could afford generosity toward the past. An Wei had come because Liu Xiao asked her to. "Please, Mama," Liu Xiao had said on the phone 2 weeks before. "I need you to be there. Will you trust me?" An Wei had said yes. She always said yes to her daughter. Liu Xiao had been born during the year Liu Ming built his first real company. He had not been present for the birth. There was a negotiation. He had explained this to An Wei the following morning in a tone that suggested explanation was courtesy rather than apology. An Wei had held her daughter and said nothing, and understood very early what kind of marriage this would be. She had stayed for 30 years, not from weakness, from calculation of a different kind. The knowledge that leaving had costs, that Liu Xiao needed stability, that some battles were worth choosing and others were worth surviving. She had survived. She had built a life inside the marriage the way you build a life in difficult terrain. Carefully, with what is available, making it real by the accumulation of ordinary things, school events, dinners, the specific daily presence that Liu Ming thought of as background and Liu Xiao understood as everything. Liu Ming had not been cruel. That was the complicated part. He had not hit her or screamed at her or made her afraid. He had simply treated her as furniture that spoke. Occasionally useful, easily overlooked, never quite the main concern. An Wei had understood this about her husband for 20 years before she admitted it to herself. and then for 10 more years before she told her daughter. Liu Xiao had been 17 when her mother told her, but she had been watching for much longer than that. She had a specific memory. Age 9, a company dinner at a restaurant in Shanghai. She had sat beside her mother and watched her father work the room. The handshakes, the laughter, the way he moved through a space with the certainty of a man who expected to be the center of it. She had watched her mother at the edge of that same room, speaking to the wives of partners, navigating with quiet skill the social geography that made her father's business relationships possible. After dinner, in the car, her father had talked about the deals he expected to close. Her mother had listened. At one point, An Wei had mentioned a detail, something about one of the partners' wife, a difficulty in their family that was affecting his decision-making. And Liu Ming had noted it and used it at the next meeting. He had not said thank you. He had not said where he got the information. An Wei had looked out the car window. Liu Xiao had looked at her mother's reflection in the glass. She had been 9 years old, and she had not yet had language for what she was seeing. By 17, she had the language. By 27, she had the phone. Liu Xiao had been 17 when her mother told her. She had listened without interrupting. Then she had said, "I know, Mama. I've always known." They had not spoken of it again. They had not needed to. The woman arrived 6 years ago, Fang Ruoxi. An Wei had found out the way wives found out in these circles, not through confession, but through the specific recalibration of a man's attention. The way Liu Ming's phone moved from the table to his pocket. The way certain evenings developed reasons. The way he looked at An Wei across dinner sometimes with the mild guilt of someone who has decided the guilt is manageable. An Wei had hired a lawyer privately, had begun quietly learning what 30 years of marriage entitled her to. The answer was substantial. Liu Ming's company, Hengfa Group, had been built during the marriage. Chinese family law on marital assets was specific. An Wei was entitled to half. Liu Ming's lawyers had spent the last 18 months working to ensure she received considerably less. An Wei knew this. Her own lawyers were preparing. And then, 3 months before the engagement dinner, Liu Xiao had called her. "Mama," she said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me handle it. Can you do that?" "What happened?" "Papa gave me a phone for my birthday, a new one. He set it up himself. He said it was synced to the cloud." An Wei waited. "His cloud," Liu Xiao said, "not mine. He made a mistake, Mama. He synced his messages to my phone by accident. He didn't know." A silence. "I've seen things," Liu Xiao said. "I've saved them. All of it." The ballroom. Liu Ming had made his announcement 20 minutes into the dinner. He had stood with the ease of a man who understood rooms, how to fill them, how to hold them, how to make 300 eyes find his face. "Tonight," he said, "I am celebrating more than love. I am celebrating legacy." He gestured toward Ruoxi. "The future I am building." Then he turned to Liu Xiao. "And the past I am honoring. My daughter, my blood." He raised his glass. Hengfa Group will pass to Liu Xiao. It is hers. It has always been hers. The room applauded. It was a good moment. Liu Ming was excellent at good moments. Liu Xiao had sat very still through all of it. She had clapped with the room. She had smiled. She was her father's daughter in certain ways. She understood how to perform for an audience. She had been performing for 3 months. She stood up. The applause faded. "Thank you, Father," she said. "Before I respond, I want to say something." She unlocked the phone. She found the file. She had listened to it 43 times in 3 months. She knew every word. She pressed play and set the phone on the table facing outward, toward the microphone the event staff had placed there for toasts. The room heard it. Liu Ming's voice, unmistakable. 3 months ago, according to the timestamp. And Ruoxi's voice answering. They were talking about the divorce settlement, specifically about the 11 shell companies that had been created in the 14 months prior to filing. Specifically about the timing. Assets moved before the filing date would be outside the marital estate. Specifically about An Wei and what she would be able to prove and what she would not. She doesn't understand corporate structure, Liu Ming's voice said. She'll take what we offer. Ruo Shi's voice, warm and amused. And if she doesn't? She will, Liu Ming said. She always does. The recording ran for 4 minutes and 17 seconds. There were specific moments. A moment where Liu Ming listed the shell companies by name and explained their purpose with the calm of a man briefing a subordinate. A moment where Ruo Shi asked if An Wei would hire better lawyers, and Liu Ming said she would not. She had been isolated for years and did not know who to call. A moment where Liu Ming laughed, briefly, at something Ruo Shi said about the settlement offer being generous. And one moment where Ruo Shi said, "What if Xiao finds out?" And Liu Ming said, "She won't. She doesn't ask questions she doesn't want the answers to." 200 people heard this. Liu Xiao, standing at the microphone, did not change her expression. In the ballroom, no one moved. The journalists were very still. 3 of them had their phones out. 2 were recording. 1 was already typing. Liu Ming had gone the color of paper. Ruo Shi's hand on the table was white at the knuckles. She had not looked at Liu Ming since the recording started. She was looking at her own plate. The red dress that had looked so perfect 40 minutes ago now seemed like a different costume from a different occasion that no longer existed. She had known, walking into this dinner, that Liu Xiao did not like her. Most daughters of powerful men did not like the woman who replaced their mothers. She had prepared for coldness, for pointed remarks at family events, for the low-grade hostility of a young woman protecting her mother's legacy. She had not prepared for this. She had not prepared for Liu Xiao to stand up in front of 200 people and play 4 minutes and 17 seconds of a private conversation Ruo Shi had believed was permanent. She thought about what she had said on that recording. She thought about the journalists. She set both hands flat on the table to stop them shaking. Liu Xiao stopped the recording. She looked at her father. "I won't accept the company," she said. Her voice was completely steady. The steadiness of someone who has rehearsed this moment until it stopped being frightening. "I won't accept a company built on 30 years of my mother's life and then restructured to make sure she couldn't claim it." She paused. "I want to be clear. I am not refusing because I don't love you. I'm refusing because I do. And because I know what love actually looks like. My mother taught me." Liu Ming opened his mouth. "I'm not finished," Liu Xiao said. He closed it. "I've sent copies of everything on that recording to 3 lawyers, including Mama's. The timestamps are verified. The voices are identified." She looked at the phone in her hand. "You gave me this phone for my birthday, Papa. You set it up yourself. You synced it to your cloud account by mistake." She set the phone on the table. "I've been grateful for it every day since." She looked at the room. 200 people looking back at her. Journalists, partners, people who had known her father for decades and were now seeing, in one dinner, everything they thought they knew about him rearranged. 30 years, Liu Xiao said. "My mother ran his household, raised his child, managed every social relationship that made this company possible, supported every decision he made, and asked for nothing that wasn't already hers by law." She looked at the head table one last time. She is asking now. She picked up her phone. She turned. An Wei was sitting at the table near the edge of the room, straight-backed, hands still in her lap. She had not moved through any of it. She had sat and listened to her husband's voice discussing how to take from her what was hers, in a room full of people, played by her daughter. Liu Xiao crossed the ballroom. It was not a short walk. 200 people watched every step. She reached her mother's table. She sat down in the empty chair beside her. She took her mother's hand. An Wei looked at her daughter. "You didn't tell me," she said quietly. Her voice was not angry. "I needed you to hear it the same way they did," Liu Xiao said. "I needed everyone to hear it at once." An Wei was quiet for a moment. "Your father is going to be very angry," she said. "I know." "You refused his company, in public." "I know." "You may not get another chance at Mama." Liu Xiao squeezed her hand. "I don't want what he built. I want what you built. I've been watching you build it my entire life. I know exactly what it is." An Wei looked at her daughter's face. 27 years old, dark eyes. The specific steadiness that Liu Xiao had always had, the quality that people who didn't know her read as coldness, and that An Wei had always known as something else. Patience. The long patience of someone who waits until the moment is exactly right. "What did we build?" An Wei said. "You taught me," Liu Xiao said, "that the people who stay are more valuable than the people who perform. That quiet work is real work. That a person who runs a household and raises a child and holds a family together for 30 years hasn't been wasting her time. She's been building something." She looked at her mother. "That's what we built. And it's worth more than Hengfa Group." An Wei looked at her daughter for a long time. Then, for the first time that evening, she smiled. The journalists were already moving. 2 of them reached the ballroom doors before Liu Xiao had finished crossing the room. The financial reporters had their laptops open. A woman from one of the major business publications was on her phone in the corridor, voice low and fast. Liu Ming's PR assistant appeared at his shoulder within 90 seconds. A young man, 24, who had been hired 8 months ago and had never seen anything like this in his career, and would not forget it. "Sir," he said, "we need to—" Liu Ming held up one hand. He was still watching Liu Xiao walk toward An Wei. The assistant went quiet. At the head table, Liu Ming had not moved. The journalists had. 2 of them were already in the hallway making calls. The financial reporters were pulling up corporate records on their phones. The story was not the engagement anymore. Ruoshi sat very still with her hands in her lap and looked at no one. Liu Ming's assistant appeared at his shoulder, said something. Liu Ming did not respond. He was watching his daughter and his ex-wife at the table near the exit. An Wei's hand in Liu Xiao's. The 2 of them talking quietly, unhurried, as if the room around them and the 200 witnesses and the recording that was already being transcribed somewhere did not exist. As if they were the only 2 people who mattered. He had made one mistake. One small, technical, completely accidental mistake. A phone set up in haste, a cloud account not checked. A birthday gift he had bought and handed over without thinking because the thinking had been elsewhere. 30 years of careful planning. One mistake. Ruoshi leaned toward him. "What do we do?" Liu Ming didn't answer her. He was still watching his daughter. Liu Xiao had not looked back at him since she sat down with her mother. She had not needed to. She had said everything she needed to say while facing him. The rest was already in motion. The lawyers, the journalists, the timestamps, the verified voices. He had taught her everything she knew about how power moved through a room. He had taught her by example. How to enter a space and own it. How to read an audience. How to wait for the moment when silence would land harder than words. He had not intended to teach her these things. He had simply done them in front of her for 27 years, and she had watched with the attention of someone who understood she was learning something valuable. He had not thought she was paying that kind of attention. He had thought, the way some fathers think about daughters, that she observed the margins but did not quite comprehend the center. That the world he moved through was something she witnessed but did not study. He had been, in this, completely wrong. She had used it. He sat at the head of a table laid with white linen and crystal, and the remains of a celebration that had ended 20 minutes ago, and he understood something he had not understood when the evening began. He had thought he was giving his daughter the company. He had not understood what she was going to give him in return. An Wei and Liu Xiao left the ballroom together. They did not rush. They did not speak to anyone. An Wei kept her back straight the way she always had in rooms like this, the composure that Liu Ming had always read as deference and that was, actually, its opposite. The composure of someone who had nothing left to perform. In the lobby, Liu Xiao stopped. "Are you okay?" she said. An Wei considered this honestly, the way she considered things now, without the old habit of adjusting the answer for someone else's comfort. "No," she said, "not yet." "Okay, but I will be." "I know," Liu Xiao said. They walked out into the Beijing night, cold and clear, the city going on in its ordinary way, indifferent to what had just happened in the ballroom above. An Wei looked up at the lit windows of the hotel. "He'll fight," she said. "Even now, he'll fight." "He can try," Liu Xiao said. "His lawyers are going to have a difficult time explaining 4 minutes and 17 seconds of his own voice." An Wei almost smiled. "Where did you learn to think like this?" Liu Xiao looked at her. "I watched you," she said. "For 27 years I watched you figure out how to survive inside that house without ever becoming someone else, without ever letting him decide who you were." She paused. "That takes more intelligence than anything he ever did in a boardroom." An Wei was quiet. "I'm going to take what's mine," she said finally. Not a question, a decision being made aloud, in the cold, outside a hotel where a party was ending badly. All of it. "Yes," Liu Xiao said, "you are." An Wei nodded. She took her daughter's arm. They walked into the city together, away from the lights of the ballroom, away from the cameras and the white linen and the man at the head of the table who had made one small mistake. 30 years and one phone, set up in haste for a birthday by a man who had never quite paid enough attention. If this story reached something in you, subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever watched someone patient finally choose their moment? Because An Wei waited 30 years, and Liu Xiao held a phone for 3 months, and they walked out together into the cold. And that was the whole story.